New details about Lewis Hamilton's future in Formula One are emerging ahead of the 2022 season. What has surfaced, like the controversy that sparked the entire situation, is both surprising and contentious. Without further ado, let's take a look at the most recent developments in the FIA investigation in Abu Dhabi, as well as Lewis Hamilton's potential return. Following the contentious 2021 season finale in Abu Dhabi, initial reports suggested Hamilton was thinking about retiring. However, with recent developments in the FIA investigation, as well as the Mercedes W13 car's scheduled launch in less than a week, the headlines may have shifted. Pundits now believe Hamilton will take his place on the 2022 grid, driving for Mercedes in his bid for a record-breaking 8th World Championship. Karen Chandhok, a former Formula One driver and television presenter, agrees, believing Hamilton demonstrated in 2021 that he still has the desire to win. My personal instinct is that he will come back. I think he showed in the last 4 races of last season his hunger to win, and his inherent speed has not dimmed at all. What he did in those last 4 races, the quality of driving in those last 4 races was exceptional. It was just as good as anything from Lewis in the last 14 years. But that doesn't mean Hamilton won't bide his time before he takes place on the grid for the Bahrain Grand Prix in March. The FIA is expected to release their findings only on the Friday of that race weekend, leaving Hamilton very little time to respond before he decides whether to hop in the car. However, whatever action the FIA takes, particularly if motorsport governing body decides FIA race director Michael Masi cannot continue in his position, will almost certainly be known before Bahrain. When asked how much influence the FIA investigation would have on Lewis Hamilton's decision, Chandhok replied, "As long as he can come back in the right frame of mind. As long as the FIA can demonstrate to him they have made changes and put mechanisms in place to make the sport a fairer sport for what Lewis perceives to be an injustice towards him, he will come back." Hamilton lost the 2021 championship in dramatic fashion in Abu Dhabi when a late race safety car ended his hopes of a record-breaking 8th title. After losing the championship, Hamilton informed Mercedes on the final lap of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix that the race was being manipulated. After that, he gave a brief interview congratulating Verstappen and saying we'll see about next year before leaving. While he broke his silence in late January when he announced a school initiative, the Mercedes driver has yet to comment on the finale, Michael Masi's unprecedented call, or even confirm, at least publicly, that he will return to the grid this season. While there hasn't been much going on, speculation about his future has been rampant after the FIA launched an investigation into Masi's decision-making. Dutch racing driver Jeroen Bleekemolen believes the Briton has made his point very clear. His opinion is noticed and everyone is talking about it. That puts pressure on the FIA. They have to intervene and make changes. The FIA has to come up with a good story. Otherwise, Hamilton's first words will not be what the F1 leadership would like to hear. Jonathan Noble, a British journalist, also echoed this sentiment. His silence illustrates the enormous frustration. It underlines the need for the FIA to change things. Saying nothing is more impressive than saying all the things Lewis could have said. The ball is in the FIA's court. The silence is unusual, but the way Hamilton lost in the world title was also far from normal. Hamilton has the feeling the competition has been manipulated. His annoyance is so great he has closed himself off from the outside world. That is often the case in life. If you have nothing good to say, it's better to not say anything. Regardless of the unusual circumstances surrounding the title-ending decision at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, most believe Lewis will return. When asked, Bleekemolen made a similar statement to Chandhok. "I believe and hope he continues. It's more fun when he's there. Lewis is driven and good enough to last a few more years." He also sees that 8th world title. Hamilton is trying to increase the pressure on the FIA Motorsport Federation and is powerful. I think he wants to get some people out of there, like race director Michael Masi. Lewis wants to turn it upside down. He can do that. He's got a lot of influence as the greatest of all. Some people will disappear. With only a few weeks until the start of the 2022 Formula One season, speculation about Michael Masi's role as the FIA's race director continues. According to the consensus, however, Masi will be replaced by someone else in 2022. With the FIA FIA's decision still pending and the first pre-season test just around the corner, they will need to make a decision soon. F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali has taken a personal interest in resolving the situation. The Italian worked at the FIA before being hired by Liberty Media, and he is well versed in the organisation's operations. He's working closely with the FIA's new president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and his Secretary General, Peter Beyer. Last week, Beyer, the FIA's Secretary General of Sport since 2017, provided an intriguing insight into the types of discussions that are taking place after being asked about Massey. He's done a super job, we have told him that, but also there is a possibility that there will be a new race director. I can only make suggestions to the World Council, and they will definitely include him. He added, I assured Michael of the Federation's backing in our discussions and let him know. We want to continue working with you, but I also need your understanding that we have to deal with the issue. Beyer also stated that even if Massey stays, significant changes are on the way. To begin with, some of the jobs he has to be doing will be shared out, reducing his workload. There will be a division of the tasks of the race director, who is also sports director, safety and track delegate. The circuit inspection role requires a significant amount of time. Massey had to make several trips to Jeddah between races at the end of 2021 to check on progress at the new venue, and in the age of COVID, any extra travel becomes a challenge. Charlie Whiting, his workaholic predecessor, was able to juggle multiple jobs, but he had years to grow into his many roles. Massey was also hampered by the fact that the 2021 season was the longest in F1 history. Another unavoidable change will be the prohibition of team principal radio interventions. It made for great television at times, but the emotional messages from Christian Horner and Toto Wolff in Abu Dhabi were a step too far, and the FIA and F1 now realise that allowing them to participate was a mistake because it added unnecessary pressure to Massey. According to Beyer, routine radio calls from teams will now be handled by someone else in race control. The team bosses will no longer be able to intervene on this channel, but the team managers will still be able to because they will have to be able to ask questions. We want to build in a buffer with a staff member who will take these inquiries. In future, the race director will be able to concentrate on his task and will no longer be distracted. The third anticipated change is the implementation of remote assistance in the form of extra eyes and ears working from a dedicated site, reviewing incidents and feeding information to race control at the circuits. That makes sense, given that the race director had his hands full dealing with the aftermath of the crash and any safety car situations, as well as potentially determining who was at fault. Who could step in if Massey loses his race director role and is asked to move sideways to focus on his circuit inspection and safety delegate jobs, for example? Replacing him is a difficult task for the FIA for a variety of reasons. To begin with, not everyone who is potentially qualified will be willing to give up 23 with all the associated travel. Second, the job is seen as a poisoned chalice now, more than ever. The FIA is well aware of the challenges that any newcomer will face, which is another reason for having co-directors, which relieves pressure on one person's shoulders. Eduardo Freitas, GT and WEC race director for over 2 decades, and Scott Elkins, who has served as a deputy in F1, but is already busy with Formula E and DTM and has a family back at home in the USA, are among those qualified to fill Massey's shoes from within the FIA system. On the other hand, they could also share a co-director role working alongside Massey. Beyer stated that one of the most difficult aspects of being F1's referee is dealing with pressure on social media. Michael has developed a relatively thick skin against the attacks of individual teams. When you work at the FIA, you have to be aware that you're working for the sports police. The policeman rarely gets sympathy, as in daily life. What has become unbearable is reactions on social media. They will stop at nothing, as you saw with the death threats against Nicholas Latifi. Michael doesn't have a social media account, but the hostility in other channels really hit him. The bottom line is that whoever takes over as race director, whether Massey or a newcomer, will have a difficult task ahead of them. Following Abu Dhabi, there will be a greater emphasis than ever on the decision-making process in race control, with little room for error. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed watching the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and remember to click the bell button to be notified of future videos. Please share your thoughts in the section below. Will Lewis Hamilton make a comeback in 2022? Which teams will be vying for the championship next season? Do you think Michael Massey will stay on as F1's race director? We'd love to hear what you think.